Joel. No boss. Just fun.
Brand new Doctor Who starts Saturday the 11th of May on BBC One and iPlayer.
On Question Time, our audience here in Tottenham in North London have many questions. Are too many people off sick? And if the fear of death in the Channel isn't stopping people come in small boats, will Rwanda? We're on iPlayer now and BBC One after the news.
We've the BBC News at 10 for you now with Clive Myrie in London and Lucy Owen with Wales Today, live from Cardiff.
At 10, can he survive as Scotland's First Minister? It's been a dramatic day for Humza Yousaf. His shock decision to end power sharing with the Scottish Greens leads to a motion of no confidence in his leadership.
He's been in office barely a year, but tonight, Mr Yousaf's future hangs in the balance.
Also tonight, after the Carmarthenshire school stabbings, a 13-year-old girl will appear in court charged with 3 attempted murders.
If you don't have immunity, you're not going to do anything. You're going to become a ceremonial president.
A case unlike any heard before. The US Supreme Court deliberates if Donald Trump should have immunity from criminal prosecution.
Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine!
We report on the wave of pro-Palestinian campus protests sweeping America.
We'll have the latest as a 13-year-old girl is charged with the attempted murders of 2 teachers and a pupil after a stabbing at a school in Ammanford. And steel unions react angrily to Tata pressing ahead with closing both blast furnaces.
Hello there. Humza Yousaf's position as Scotland's First Minister hangs by a thread tonight after his shock decision to end the SNP's power-sharing arrangement with the Scottish Greens. He now leads a minority government, a predicament seized upon by Scottish Conservatives, who've called a vote of no confidence, which the Scottish Greens now say they'll back. If he loses the vote due next week, his position could become untenable barely a year since taking over as First Minister from Nicola Sturgeon. So, how did it come to this, and could he still cling on? With the very latest, let's join James Cook, our Scotland editor, live in Edinburgh. James.
Well, it's been a day here of harsh words and of recriminations, of allegations flung, of defences and indeed of some political drama, with the Scottish Green Party insisting that it had no confidence in the First Minister Humza Yousaf, a position which its leaders said they were happy to make clear here in this Parliament, even if that brings him down.
Why have you been up at the House this morning?
It ended where it began. 2 Green ministers leaving the Scottish Government nearly 3 years after signing the Butte House Agreement. Inside the grand Edinburgh residence where the deal was struck, the First Minister confirmed it was over.
It is now my judgment that the balance has shifted. The Butte House Agreement was intended to provide stability to the Scottish Government, and it has made possible a number of achievements. But it has served its purpose.
You were strongly backing this deal with the Greens just days ago. You've previously said it was worth its weight in gold. Aren't the Greens right when they say that this U-turn shows that you are weak and hopeless?
Quite the opposite. It shows leadership. As the leader of the government, leader of the party that elected me, I've got to make sure I do what's in the best interest of Scotland.
The deal began under Nicola Sturgeon with promises of a new politics, of cooperation and collaboration. But it ran into trouble over a failure to meet a key climate change target and a dispute about transgender healthcare. Now, the Greens say they'll vote against Humza Yousaf in a motion of confidence.
The First Minister has decided, I'm sorry to say, to capitulate to the most reactionary, backward-looking forces within the SNP. and it's the opposite of what's in Scotland's best interests.
The future generations of Scotland have been betrayed. The progressive policies that Greens were working towards were about creating a long-standing vision for a greener and fairer Scotland.
Presiding officer, and maybe I should.
At First Minister's question time, the other opposition parties also piled on the pressure.
The people of Scotland didn't vote for this First Minister. The people of Scotland didn't vote for this mess and this chaos. So isn't it time to end the circus and call an election?
He has abandoned the platform he stood on. He claims it's now a new beginning, but really it's the beginning of the end. Isn't Humza Yousaf a lame duck First Minister?
That may depend on his former SNP leadership rival Ash Regan, who could hold the casting vote. She is now a member of Alex Salmond's Alba party.
She's one of the few adults in the room. So he has the opportunity to try and secure her vote. But he'll have to work at it. You can't assume it, but you have to work at it. And he's going to have to respond to the letter that Ash will be writing him to say what her priorities are in terms of independence, in terms of the protection of rights of women and girls, and in terms of restoring competence to the Scottish administration.
Ms Regan is now, says her leader, the most powerful politician in the Scottish Parliament.
And James, if Humza Yousaf loses this vote of confidence next week, do you think he'll survive?
I think that it would be very difficult for him to survive that, Clive. It would be an enormous blow to his authority. The question would then be, would the government survive, or could somebody else step in and command the confidence of the Scottish Parliament? But there's a lot of water to flow under the bridge before we get there. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The question between then and now, really, is what does Ash Regan want? Now, we had a hint of it from Alex Salmond there, and one of the things that it seems that the Alba party would like is movement on this most contentious of issues, gender, and particularly, according to one source in the party I've been speaking to, a commitment that the Scottish Government will implement in full the recommendations of the Cass Review into gender services in England here in Scotland. I had a chat with Ash Regan this evening, and she said she has genuinely not decided how to vote yet. She's waiting to see what happens. It's going to be a nervous few days and hours for Humza Yousaf.
Indeed. James, thank you. James Cook there in Edinburgh. A 13-year-old girl will appear in court tomorrow, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. It follows the stabbing of 2 teachers and a teenager at a school in Carmarthenshire yesterday. Thomas Morgan has the very latest.
The scene yesterday, one of the 3 injured members of Ysgol Dyffryn Aman being taken to hospital after being stabbed. This afternoon it was announced that teacher Fiona Elias, pictured here, and another teacher who the BBC understands to be Liz Hopkins, and the pupil affected have all been released from hospital. The shocking incident prompted a huge multi-agency response. CID and forensic teams recovered a knife, and tonight an update from the police.
A 13-year-old girl was arrested at the scene. I can confirm she has now been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder.
Dyfed-Powys Police also said that last night concerns were raised over some social media posts that reference the incident that took place here in Dyffryn Aman yesterday. They went to the home of the person they believe responsible for that content, and a 15-year-old male was arrested and remains in custody. They're now investigating whether there is a link between the 2 alleged offences. Ammanford is still in shock, and as staff of Dyffryn Aman return tomorrow, they'll prepare to assist those pupils affected as best they can for when they return on Monday. Thomas Morgan, BBC News, Ammanford.
It's a case that goes to the heart of presidential power, and the US Supreme Court's ruling will be historic when it decides whether or not Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution over acts carried out while in office. Mr. Trump is, of course, facing dozens of criminal charges, but claims all presidents should have special immunity. Gary O'Donoghue is in Washington as the Supreme Court begins hearing all the arguments. We know what the president or the former president's case is going to be. What will his opposition be?
Well, nearly 3 hours of oral arguments before the Supreme Court today. And for the first time in the near 250-year history of this republic, this court has been asked to rule on whether a president, and in this case Donald Trump, is immune from criminal prosecution for acts conducted while he was president. It all relates, of course, to the case he's facing over his attempts to overturn the 2020 general election and that subsequent attack on the Capitol on January the 6th. His lawyers argue the Constitution does give him that immunity. His prosecutors are saying, no one is above the law. This could have huge implications, not just for Donald Trump's other criminal cases that he's facing, not just for the election in November, Clive, but also for every single president here on in.
OK, Gary, thank you. Gary O'Donoghue there live in Washington. Now, the former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has had one of his convictions for rape overturned. New York's highest court has ruled he didn't get a fair trial. The case in 2020 was a landmark in the Me Too movement, which exposed sexual misconduct at the highest levels in Hollywood. The first woman to go public with allegations against him, the actress Ashley Judd, said the court ruling was an act of institutional betrayal. Emma Vardy has more from Los Angeles.
When Harvey Weinstein, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, was accused of rape, it led to an outpouring about a culture of sexual assault and misogyny experienced by women around the world, what became known as the Me Too movement. Many women came forward accusing Harvey Weinstein of forcing them into sex. For years, there was a fear of speaking out, they said, because of his ability to make or break careers. But now the rape conviction against Harvey Weinstein that came out of the Me Too movement has been overturned in New York. Ashley Judd, the first actress to make allegations against him publicly, said the court's decision was a shock.
Today is an act of institutional betrayal. And our institutions betray survivors of male sexual violence.
The Court of Appeals said prosecutors had called witnesses whose accusations were not part of the charges against him. That meant, it said, he was unfairly tried for past behaviour. Harvey Weinstein was also convicted of rape in a separate case here in LA. Last year, he was sentenced to 16 years for raping a woman in a Beverly Hills hotel. He will remain in prison while a decision is made in New York over whether to retry him. Harvey Weinstein's lawyer has commended the appeals court, he said, for upholding the principles that should govern a criminal trial.
In this courthouse behind us at that trial, the law was not applied fairly to Harvey Weinstein. You can't throw out 100 years of legal precedent because someone is unpopular.
Harvey Weinstein's conviction in California is also being appealed. His legal team are looking into what implications the New York ruling could have here. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Los Angeles.
A Moroccan asylum seeker who stabbed a pensioner to death in Hartlepool last October has been found guilty of murder. Ahmed Alid said he'd been motivated by the war in Gaza. He's also been found guilty of attempting to murder his housemate and assaulting 2 police officers. He'll be sentenced next month. The boss of the new Co-op Live Arena has resigned. Gary Roden's resignation comes just days ahead of the scheduled opening. The venue, which will be the largest in the UK, held its first test event on Saturday but had to apologise after cancelling some tickets just hours beforehand. It's now also postponed its official opening shows next week because work hadn't been completed on its power supply. Labour says it expects to renationalise nearly all passenger rail services within 5 years if it wins the next election. It says a new public body will inherit existing contracts when they expire. Automatic refunds for train delays and better internet connection on trains are also planned, but the Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the plans are unfunded. Chris Mason has that story.
Hurtling for the train. Among the throng this morning, the man who hopes he's striding towards Downing Street. Keir Starmer wants much of the railway to be publicly owned.
Hiya, how you doing?
He reckons he has a plan to lure more of us onto the trains by making fares and timetables simpler. I've joined him on a visit to County Durham to Hitachi's train factory to put your questions to the Labour leader.
Privatisation has not worked, it's deteriorated under this government. Our job, if we're elected into government, is to pick this up, fix it, and that will require us, as the franchises end, to bring the franchises into public ownership.
Will your plan make travelling by train cheaper?
Well, it will ensure that the best price is available for everyone.
Sure, but you're not able to say it'd be cheaper.
People have no confidence that they're getting the best fare. But this isn't about coming in and capping the fares. It is about making sure that the system overall works.
Isn't this same old Labour, a zeal to nationalise, suspicious of profit, driven by ideology?
No, this is not ideological fixation at all. It's actually ideologically fixated not to do it, because to simply say, well, even if it would be better run, if it was a public entity, we won't do it, is the kind of ideology that, in my view, just gets in the way of the passenger focus that I'm absolutely determined we will have.
The Scottish National Party said they'd long argued privatisation had been a disaster. The Liberal Democrats said they wanted rail fares frozen. And as for the Conservatives...
Since privatisation, we have seen a doubling in the number of passengers on the railway, £100 billion invested in new rolling stock and improved services. Actually, under British Rail, under the previous nationalised system, the number of people using railways was falling year after year after year.
So what do folk outside Darlington Station make of trains in public ownership?
We've lived through that before.
But it'll have its problems if they do it.
I am.
Almost every single day there's a delay with something. Like, there's been days I've had an exam and I've almost missed my exam because of delays.
Nationalising the railways, bringing them back into public ownership, do you think that would be a good idea?
Yeah, they can sort all the strikes now, yeah.
You know what some people will be thinking? They'll be thinking, never mind who owns the railways, what about all of these strikes? We've got some more strikes coming up very shortly, and some people might think a Labour government with their mates in the unions, things could get worse, couldn't they?
Well, let's look at the record of the last Labour government and what's happening now. We've got more strikes going on now than we've had for years and years and years under this government.
Sure, I hear your critique, but you could be Prime Minister in a matter of months, and people will want to know how you would resolve those strikes and whether you would pay people more to do it.
We will get in the room, we'll negotiate, and we'll come to an agreement to settle these strikes.
The election nears, the arguments sharpen, the scrutiny notches up. Chris Mason, BBC News in Newton Aycliffe.
Pro-Palestinian protests on American university and college campuses are spreading, with hundreds of arrests as police confront the demonstrators. Some are likening the student activism to the wave of protests during the Vietnam War in the late 1960s. Well, the unrest intensified last week after students at New York's Columbia University set up a Gaza solidarity protest camp. Then the demonstration spread quickly from the East Coast to the West and many places in between. Sarah Smith has more from New York.
This protest is getting louder as demos are spreading through the country. What started here now feels like a nationwide movement. Students whose passion is often fueled by images of the war in Gaza they see on their phones.
When you wake up every day and what you're seeing are children who have lost everything, have lost limbs, families who have been torn apart, losing their homes. It's hard, like at whatever age, right, to ignore that.
Student protesters clashed with police at Emerson College in Boston last night. Today at Emory University in Atlanta, some were tackled to the ground as a number were detained. And protests are continuing at the University of Texas in Austin, despite dozens of arrests overnight. At Columbia, Israeli flags and pictures of the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza have been erected by Jewish students who feel hostility from the protesters. This philosophy student says she feels so intimidated she didn't want us to show her face.
I have felt extremely physically unsafe, very distracted from my schoolwork. I'm very worried for all my other fellow Jewish students that look more Jewish than I do, because there have been a lot of emotional and physical assaults to them based on the way that they look. And it has just been extremely disappointing to walk into school in a place where I deserve to be here and to learn and feel like my voice and maybe my story and the way that I feel about what's going on doesn't really matter because I'm not being supported.
Ilhan Omar, a left-wing Democratic congresswoman, joined the protesters today, as this is becoming a national political battle. The leading Republican in Congress came yesterday to call the protests anti-Semitic. These scenes greeted President Biden as he arrived in New York today. At George Washington University, in the capital, professors have joined their students on a protest, one that Jewish students fear is calling for the destruction of the Israeli state.
I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the First Amendment right for free speech and to gather and to protest however you guys like, to the point where but there is a line where it goes from being purely protesting another government's actions into protesting the idea of the state's existence and projecting harm onto other people.
The protesters at Columbia say some anti-Semitic incidents were caused by interlopers, and they point to the Jewish students in their midst.
It's complicated. I think it's very, very important that we're here and that our voices are here not just to show that there are Jews that are very, very supportive of Palestine and Palestinian liberation, but also to be voices that are internally supportive of making the space more accepting for Jewish students.
The students say they are determined to stay put, despite looming finals and the imminent end of term. The university still wants them out by the end of the week. Now, Columbia University has set a deadline of midnight tonight, East Coast time, for the students to end their protest, and the students are adamant they will not do that, so we'll see what happens next. And the University of South California has just announced it's massively scaling back its graduation ceremony because of threats to disrupt it, and I think that's something you might see happening across the country in the coming weeks.
Okay, Sarah, thank you for that. Sarah Smith there, our North America editor, live in New York. Here, a former senior executive at the post office has told the public inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal that she never knowingly did anything wrong. Angela van den Bogert was a senior director who personally handled many sub-postmaster complaints about the computer system. She says she's truly sorry for the devastation caused to branch managers. Here's Emma Simpson.
For these sub-postmasters, it's the biggest moment in the inquiry so far, a day they didn't want to miss.
I lost my house and the office and my health from it, blamed myself and became suicidal from it all.
It devastated us and affected over 4,000 postmasters or sub-postmasters. You know, none of this need have happened.
It's a very personal thing to face her face to face again. So yeah, it's very important.
They're talking about Angela van den Bogert, the post office exec, described as knowing more about Horizon than anyone else.
Angela is our head of network services.
Many of us know a lot more about her too, after the drama, showing how closely involved she was.
We're all so sorry for your loss.
I do solemnly.
So what's her story today? It began with an apology.
I am truly, truly sorry for the devastation caused to you, your family and friends.
Firstly, I think you make no concessions or admissions that you did anything wrong, correct?
Well, I didn't knowingly do anything wrong, and I would never knowingly do anything wrong.
Sub-postmasters were repeatedly told no one could access their accounts without their permission. It was a key claim in prosecutions. But the inquiry was shown this email chain sent to Angela in 2010, where a colleague says Fujitsu can actually put an entry into a branch account remotely.
I don't recall seeing this, and that would have struck me as being really strange.
Angela van den Bogert was copied into several emails about remote access. There's a slew of other evidence now showing that Fujitsu could tamper with sub-postmasters' accounts without them knowing. Yet the post office continued to deny that this was possible for another 8 years.
Well, is it a case of everyone missing it? Or is it that the overriding objective is to defend very robustly the position that there is no remote access?
That was never my position. I was certainly not trying to cover up or suppress or do anything along those lines.
Parmod Kalia was wrongly convicted and sent to prison. He wasn't impressed.
She's a hard, stern woman and she's choosing her words very carefully.
Believable?
No. See right through them.
The inquiry heard this post office veteran laid the blame at Fujitsu's door.
Can you not just say sorry? No ifs, no buts.
She's back here again tomorrow. Emma Simpson, BBC News, at the post office inquiry.
Two of the household cavalry horses that bolted galloping through central London yesterday are in a serious condition, having undergone surgery. The Army says it's too early to know if they'll return to official duties. 7 horses were spooked during a military exercise, with 4 unseating their riders. As Chichi Uzundu reports, the household cavalry have been back on parade.
This is the event the bolted horses were being exercised for. The Major General's inspection, which is an annual test of the household cavalry's ability to conduct state ceremonial duties for the year. The horses Quaker, Tennyson and both Vida and Trojan, who are seen here running through central London, were spooked after building materials were dropped from a height next to them. 4 soldiers were thrown, and while 3 needed hospital treatment, it's been confirmed 1 has now been discharged. A cyclist was also treated in hospital. The Army has confirmed that all 4 horses that bolted yesterday are now under veterinary care. 3 of them are being looked after here at the Hyde Park Barracks, including the white one that was obviously injured. The 4th is at an equine hospital. Equine specialists say that despite months of training to get used to the different sounds of London, these animals can still get spooked.
If something they perceive to be a little bit different, so it may be louder or it may be in closer proximity to them, maybe a slightly different sort of noise to what they're used to, that can trigger a fear response in horses still.
Vida and Quaker's injuries are serious, but the Army hopes they will make enough of a recovery to join the rest of their regiment on official duties in the near future. Chichi Uzundu, BBC News.
It's one of the most beautiful cities on earth, attracting huge numbers of tourists. But now Venice has become the first ever city to charge visitors in a bid to control numbers. Now the tourists need to pay €5 for a day trip between now and mid-July. As the scheme is tested out, those who refuse to pay face a fine of between €50 to €300. Here's Mark Owen.
Sometimes beauty can be overshared. Venice, glorious, unique, and creaking under the weight of mass tourism. 30 million visitors a year, 2/3 of them day trippers, crowding the same sites at the same times, pushing out the locals. So a new way to tackle it, a €5 entry fee from today, the world's first such scheme. Residents and overnight tourists are among those exempt in controls across Venice.
So this is how it works. I've entered the city at the main train station. I go to the payment website, find the €5 fee for today, click through and enter my name and credit card details. So I get a QR code, I come through and have it scanned. Buongiorno. It shows that I've paid and I can enter the city and avoid a fine of up to €300.
It's a good idea to make money. I don't know if people will like it and want to keep coming to pay.
I would probably try to change my travel dates to make it a little more smooth.
So avoid the fee?
To avoid the fee, yeah.
I think if it can help with their infrastructure or whatever else they may have like a need for, then I think that would be great.
The authorities say it's a trial until July that could be extended in price and duration.
It's very important for us to discourage the day trippers and to know in advance how many people will visit Venice, so we can arrange all the services, the transport, the cleaning of the city. A lot of cities in Europe, most of all, are affected by over-tourism. So do you think that you will be a guinea pig, if you like, for other cities? Yes, it's not the most beautiful role, but I think yes.
But the tide of critics is growing, like environmental scientist Jane DeMosto. She's lived here for 30 years and seen the number of residents drop to record lows in a city threatened by tourism and climate change.
A €5 ticket is less than the cost of a drink at a bar. I think we know enough about what's happening to not need to do experiments. We just need to get on and address the real issues of protecting Venice and making it a better place to live.
So this historic city grapples with an Instagram-era problem as Venetians wait to see if this scheme can save their increasingly fragile jewel. Mark Lowen, BBC News, Venice.
Manchester City have closed the gap at the top of the Premier League. They're now just a point behind the leaders, Arsenal, with the game in hand after a convincing 4-0 win tonight at Brighton. Here's Natalie Perks.
Amidst the unrelenting pressure of this title race, Manchester City have been unyielding. He knows if they win all their remaining games, the title is theirs again. Even he surprised himself. Their second goal came as no surprise though. Phil Foden, as so often this season, stepping up when needed most.
A VAR check to go 18 league games unbeaten. Liverpool now leapfrogged. Mancunian breath.
Time for the weather now. Here's Ben. Hi there.
Thank you very much. It is still cold out there. In fact, it's been cold enough today for some of these big shower clouds to have delivered not only some rain but some snow over high ground in Scotland. You can see the showers here on the earlier satellite image, a mix of sunshine and showers across the northern half of the UK. Further south, stripes of cloud still bringing some showery rain through the rest of the night. Now, where that cloud and showery rain lingers across southern parts, that will help the temperatures to hold up a little bit, but further north where the skies remain clear, it's going to be cold enough for a frost to take us into tomorrow morning. But where we have that frosty start, it will at least be a bright start. Many places tomorrow will again see some spells of sunshine, again a scattering of showers. Some of those could contain some sleet and snow over the hills and mountains in Scotland. Down towards the south of England, we will keep more cloud and some showery rain. Temperatures, well, about where they have been for the last few days, 8 to 13 degrees. That's a touch below the average for the time of year. Now, as we head towards the weekend, an area of low pressure to the south of us. This frontal system here bringing rain for some during Saturday. That band of rain moving its way northwards across England and Wales. Behind it, down towards the south coast, sunny spells and sharp showers. Northern Ireland and Scotland, again, that sunshine and showers mixed. Temperatures not improving very much at all. 9 to 12 degrees covers it for most of us. And then for Sunday, some outbreaks of rain likely to affect large parts of England and Wales, perhaps clipping eastern Scotland. Again, sunshine and showers further west, quite breezy close to this east coast. And again, those temperatures really struggling. But next week, it is set to warm up, believe it or not. Temperatures for some through the middle of the week could get close to 20 degrees, but that doesn't mean sunshine all the way. Still some rain at times. Clive.
All right, roll on next week. Thanks, Ben. That's it. Now on BBC One, time for all the news where you are. Have a very good night.
Thanks, Clive. Welcome to Wales Today. I'm Lucy Owen. The headlines. A 13-year-old girl has been charged with 3 attempted murders after a stabbing at a school in Ammanford. And steel unions react angrily to Tata's decision to press ahead with plans to close both blast furnaces in Port Talbot. Good evening. A 13-year-old girl has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after 2 teachers and a pupil were stabbed at a school in Ammanford. Students at Ysgol Dyffryn Aman went into lockdown yesterday morning. Dyfed-Powys Police said the teenager was arrested at the scene. Malerie Williams reports.
The school gates of Ysgol Dyffryn Aman locked after a stabbing here yesterday. 3 people, 2 teachers and a pupil, have now been released from hospital. One of those is Fiona Elias, a Welsh and drama teacher and head of Year 7.
And BBC Wales understands that the other teacher who was injured yesterday is Liz Hopkin.
A CID-led investigation was launched, and there has continued to be a police presence here at the school today as we gather evidence to assist our inquiries. A 13-year-old girl was arrested at the scene. I can confirm she has now been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Following this, yesterday evening, our control room received a number of calls reporting concerns about messages being shared on social media which had references to the incident here at Ysgol Dyffryn Aman. Officers swiftly carried out a warrant at the home of the person believed to be responsible for this content, and a 15-year-old male has been arrested. He also remains in police custody whilst we investigate these allegations. While this investigation is being run separately to our inquiries here at the school, our officers are seeking to establish if there is a connection between the alleged offences.
A wellbeing centre has been set up to support people.
If anybody is finding it difficult to sort of sleep or is having sort of flashbacks or any sort of thoughts of what happened yesterday, they can pop down, we can assess them and provide treatment straight away for them.
And the church here has opened its doors for anyone, offering some light and hope during a difficult time.
I think the initial reaction has been one of shock. Talking to parents outside the school yesterday, and the theme was, we just never expected this to happen in our community, not in Ammanford. I think everybody you speak to, they either have a child or a grandparent at the school, they've been there themselves, they know the teachers.
The school will remain closed tomorrow, and the 13-year-old girl who's been charged will appear at Llanelli Magistrates Court. Pupils and teachers hope to return to some sort of normality next week, but what happened yesterday will stay in their minds for a long time.
A court has heard how concerns about a head teacher charged with sexual abuse were raised with Gwynedd Council in 2019, who investigated but no action was taken. Neil Foden, who was the head at Ysgol Friars in Bangor and strategic head at Ysgol Dyffryn Nantlle, denies 20 charges against him, including sexual activity with a child. The trial at Mould Crown Court continues. A 19-year-old student who fell out of a 6th-floor window at Swansea University has died. Matthew Gilbert was rushed to the University Hospital of Wales in Cardiff from Singleton campus on the 14th of April. South Wales Police confirmed he died yesterday and say family members are being supported. Tata Steel has rejected the union's proposal to keep one blast furnace running at its Port Talbot site during its transition to greener steel production. Tata's plans are set to lead to nearly 3,000 job losses around the UK, mostly in Port Talbot. Here's our business correspondent, Hugh Thomas.
It's a matter of months before the flames go out at Port Talbot's fierce blast furnaces. Tata Steel says they're losing £1 million a day in this operation, with ageing assets that need switching off. They'll eventually build a modern electric furnace here that melts scrap steel. But in the meantime, the bulk of 2,800 jobs across the UK will be lost here in South Wales. The consultation may be over, but unions have vowed to keep fighting the plan.
I believe industrial action is planned for the near future. I believe it's towards the end of May. We're hoping that the other unions will be able to join us in that action. And yeah, ultimately we'll be behind our steel workers and our members 100%.
An alternative plan was put to Tata Steel by the unions that would keep one blast furnace in production while the greener steelmaking facility is built. But the company said it would be expensive and unsafe and won't change course.
We've incorporated some elements of the plan into our plans. For instance, the original plan was to mothball the hot strip mill. As per the suggestion of the unions, we've decided to keep that running. So we've taken on board the suggestions which we think can work. But obviously the overall multi-union plan is not financially or operationally viable. So that's what we communicated today.
Tata Steel wants to move really quickly with this. They're going to close both blast furnaces within the next few months, and those 2,800 jobs are going to start disappearing, possibly within weeks. Now, there is money set aside to help to reskill people and look for new work, but it's going to be tough.
A deal struck by the UK government means taxpayers will contribute £500 million towards the cost of Tata's new electric furnace. There's real uncertainty in Port Talbot about the next few months. Tata Steel won't change course, but the road ahead will be bumpy, with industrial action and a raft of redundancies on the horizon.
Time for the weather forecast now, and here's Sue.
Good evening. There's a change on the way, turning a bit more unsettled as we head into the weekend, a mix of sunshine and showers, and then eventually a bit milder into next week. Tomorrow, this weather system grazes the south of the UK, and that will bring thicker cloud further south and showery rain for some. Overnight, largely dry, just a few showers around, some cloud, some clearer spells, and not quite as chilly as last night. Lows of 2 to 6 Celsius. Could see some patchy frost in parts of mid and North Wales. So tomorrow stays dry and bright for longest in the north and west. Otherwise, cloud thickening from the south, a few showers, especially nearer the border, lighter winds, and once again cool for late April. Highs between 10 Celsius on Anglesey and 12 in the Vale of Glamorgan. Into the weekend, signs of a change. This low pressure system pushes up from the south, more unsettled with outbreaks of rain, particularly further east Saturday into Sunday. So Saturday, a chilly morning, brighter further north and west again, but clouds thickening with some rain pushing in from the southeast, highs of 9 to 12 Celsius. Rain lingering further south and east into Sunday, followed by sunshine and showers again. Northwest Wales seeing the best of any drier, brighter weather. So a changeable weekend, and then after this cold spell, signs of things turning milder, although not always sunnier, towards the middle of next week.
We'll be back with updates in BBC Breakfast from around 6:25 in the morning. But for now, from all of us here, Nostar, good night.
I'm trying. I'm making the same mistakes over and over again.
What have you got me into?
Do not think of taking that girl away from me because she's all I've got left.
They've taken Chris. Everyone here just wants to make some money.
Who's this fella calling the shots?
What are you going to do?